said, I just want to say thank you all so much for having me here. I work here in Central Texas and cover Texas innovators day in and day out. South by Southwest is actually really the only time where I get to touch base with global partners like you all. It's a time where journalists are flocking to get to talk to innovators and pioneers from all over the world. But my favorite thing about Texas House is that we're going to be highlighting innovators like Dr. Lemander, who are just down the street from us. I feel honored to get to sit in your presence after the work you've done across the globe. So just to give you a little bit more background, she works at the intersection of American culture and really higher education innovation. I'm ripping that off from her bio, so let me not plagiarize her there. But she is an author. She has let me see here. I'm going down the list of your amazing accomplishments. Launched a tech ed company that is flourishing now under a new group, Honor Education. But I think most importantly, she's the Vice President of Global for Rice University, where she is just absolutely pioneering the way that Rice is innovating across the globe. Did I do a good enough job there?
You did a great job. Thank you. I've never looked so good. Thanks.
She makes it really easy. We wanted to start by talking about, in our conversation so far, we've touched on how higher education here in the United States is under such a critical microscope, and that extends to research at higher ed organizations, that extends to projects within that higher ed umbrella. But you have experience on how the rest of the world looks at higher ed in the United States and right here in Texas. What's been your experience there?
No, it's dramatic. It's dramatically different. It's like there's two different worlds. The U.S. domestic world that, as you say, has a very critical eye right now, in understanding what U.S. universities are doing or not doing well, and the rest of the world, which looks to U.S. higher education as an example of real innovation and research commitment and very high quality education. So, certainly in conversations with people as I travel, I get that message. It's also clear in the data. So as many of you know, U.S. News has an annual, top U.S. university rankings. It comes out in the fall. As important, even more important for people around the world, are the international rankings. So these are the top 100 universities around the world, regardless of country, location, etc. And when we look at those rankings, it's unequivocal that U.S. universities dominate the industry. In the top 100, 36 of the top 100 are located in the United States. So given the number of countries around the world, yes, we have a lot of universities in the U.S., but the fact that so many of them are globally ranked so highly is an indicator of their health. And of course, those rankings are so important as people around the world are looking for higher education opportunities. So, families who may not have heard of most of the universities in the top 100 trust those universities because of the data that has caused them to be ranked.
Some of the things that you have done throughout your career are just examples of that excellence in higher education. I want to start with one of them in particular. I spent so much time digging through the Our America's Archive Partnership. Explain for people what that is, how did it come to be, and why is it making a name for Rice and the other partners on the project?
Yeah, so this is a digital platform. It's very long in the tooth now. I think I got funding for it back in maybe 2009. And so it really is using technology, new technology, and building of new tools to rediscover the past. So it's so interesting I'm having this conversation in Texas House because, of course, Texas, as you all know, has had many national hats over the years. Of course, Republic of Texas for a while, of course, Mexico, of course, U.S. And so when we think about how we access archives, if you've ever been to a library, right, you know that you search by U.S. history or European history or Mexican history. And so what tends to get lost is exactly that complicated story that I just described, right? How do you catalog Texas? Is it uncatalogable? One example that makes it really clear, we all know Aaron Burr, yes? Anyone who's seen Hamilton, right? What is he known for? the duel, right? He killed Alexander Hamilton. He was a founding father who killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel and became a total rogue, right? So we know him as a U.S. founding father. What we don't know is that Aaron Burr took a small militia to Texas. He wanted to create a separate country, so we're 1796, 1797, right? General Wilkerson was his second in command, right? And, his experiment failed, of course, was to create an alternative to the United States in the West, and really in what we now call Texas. When we sort of do biographies or when we try and understand Burr, that part of his story is really secondary, if not lost. So Our America's Archive is an opportunity to rediscover some of those lost stories. And so it is a multinational collaboration. Canada, US, Rice, and Mexico, Instituto Mora. We share our archives, we share the holdings of our libraries, and we, with this digital platform, created new search tools. Whether you want to use the search keyword empire, whether you want to use nation making, an individual's name, what will come up is an archive that doesn't reinforce the story we already think we know from where we sit today. And so that was a classic example of new tools, right? Playing with new tools to create a broader understanding of our past.
I want to keep going here with the partnership because I think it's really counterintuitive to the way we've all been taught to think about our history, our culture, these archives of those things. Did you receive any pushback or what was the learning curve of trying to think from this transnational perspective as opposed to filter sort United States?
It was a tech problem. It really was. I mean, people have appetite for that kind of discovery. It's really tough, right, to steer the ship in a different direction and to create the tools that would develop meaningful points of access for a multi-library, multinational archive, digital archive.
And where does that stand now? What types of technologies helped you all get the archive to where it is today?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly since however many years ago that was, things have changed a lot. That was before the year of the MOOC in 2012. I was there for that as well for Rice University. It was a fascinating decade that we've just finished for sure. But there are new tools now, right, that really are more robust and that support very, very enriched, discovery in, our nation's most important resources.
I do want to ask you, we had a conversation, Caroline, when we were chatting about how social media is often referred to as a cultural archive now, and also has connected us globally and in this way, transnationally, in a way that we've really never seen before. So how is what's going on online also informing how you all are updating and changing or evolving our America's Archive partnership?
So that is there's much work to be done, still, and I think that is one of the areas for further work, right? It'd be great to capture, and this is where honor education is so compelling to me, really be able to capture audience response, not only to the primary materials, but also to each other's responses to it. So I do think there are new technologies, new businesses out there that are doing a really great job with that. The extent to which the partnership will bolt some of those on is yet to be determined, but I think there's really rich capability for that kind of multimodal idea capture.
You mentioned honor education there. Let's explain for people what it is, what it started as when you co-founded it back in 2020, and where has it become?
Yeah, and just to be clear,
yes.
So the company that I co-founded was acquired by Honor Education. I wish
Hey, you're still senior. She's still senior advisor to Honor Education. So talk about Fora, that original idea.
Yeah, so that was an idea. I mentioned Coursera and edX to you. I was on all the senior advisory boards, and it's really clear, right? The scope of work was innovating in the classroom and creating a classroom experience that was online, asynchronous, synchronous, dynamic conversations around that for sure. But when students leave Rice, they take an exit survey and they're asked, what was the value proposition of your 4 years? And increasingly, their response has I don't want to say devalued, but gradually put less importance on the classroom and much more importance on the rest of the experience, whether it's mentorship, whether it's affinity groups, right? I found my physics fanatics. I never knew there was more than me in the world, and now we are all, tightly bonded, or whatever it is, right? And so there's a high premium on that experience. That is what really has yet to be fully exploited in a good sense of the term, right? In many of these platforms. And so how do you create that? That was a question that my co-founder and I asked ourselves. So Forum is really a community-focused platform, and we had some wonderful early adopters. It was really interesting. It was online bachelor's degrees that were very interested in this. They saw it as an opportunity to encourage persistence through a degree, right? So you don't only have the isolation of the classroom, learning together, but kind of in a parallel play environment with some interactivity, but also taking those conversations outside the classroom, or finding people in that classroom who share your interests. So it's a great idea. It was really fantastic to develop it. And then Honor Education, which has an adjacent set of priorities, moving so fast, so ferociously, so much, over 100 years of Apple knowledge in their team. And so it made good sense to let our forum get adopted away by Honor Ed.
Sticking with that theme, though, I think I've heard so much in your conversation, and really it shines through in your work, the importance of connections in higher education, that we're not educating in a vacuum. Talk about what that looks like with Forum, with Honor Education, but also in your work at Rice. Why are those connections so important to furthering innovation and the way we educate at that level?
Yeah, I think, look, we all have the idea of the lone genius who dreams into being remarkable new realities, right, inside of his or her head. And while that's certainly a piece of the puzzle, we also know that real learning happens through question and answer, through thinking about hard ideas not alone. And so in that way, community is crucial to learning. And different universities tackle that in different ways. There's a lot of really wonderful experimentation happening at universities around that set of questions. And there's things we're familiar with, team homeworks, but there's also, right, increasingly a focus on shared research projects. All of that is really terrific. But if anyone has been to college in this room, you know how important it is to feel like you have found your people and to carry those people with you over time. So you become part of a group of people who share your values and your priorities. And I think that makes us all feel less alone in the world. For sure, that's a great thing. It has very practical purposes and value in the workplace, for sure. But I think fundamentally, learning as a community is truly the kind of highest order of learning that universities can offer.
I think as we've talked a lot about Texas ideals when we were preparing for this talk, and there's this sense of, as you said, being a pioneer, being a maverick, doing it yourself. So how do we, maybe here in Texas, but also in our place in the world, hold those two things in tandem, being that lone genius or that pioneer, and also opening ourselves up to community and global partnerships, which is what I'm going to ask you about next.
Yeah, no, that's a dynamic founding tension, right? So I think we all kind of have these, sort of dual identities in our minds, right? The kind of solitary person, then being part of a group. And look, Texas has struggled with that, or experimented with it in many interesting ways over centuries, for sure. Look, this state is interesting not only because of its history, but also because of its present and future. And I think we're all here today at South by Southwest because we realize that innovation and experimentation is really kind of key to our country and certainly key to this state.
At Rice, you have really push the envelope when it comes to what the university is doing here in Texas and across the globe. First, I want to talk about the digital strategy and the growth that you brought to the university in the online space. She led digital strategy there for more than a decade, and expanded its presence immensely online. So talk about what you all did there, and was it a given with what was happening in the world, or how many barriers were you really knocking down to expand it just to the extent that you did?
Well, first let me say it's a team effort, so it took the whole community to ultimately make our, online offerings so successful and plentiful today, and I'm really pleased about that for sure. I would say anyone who's been to the Rice campus, we're a very residential community, beautiful 300 acres, very pastoral in the center of the city of Houston, and so it's a haven, and it's meant to be a haven. Students live on campus. It's very, very personalized learning. And so the idea of building online communities of learning, just not something that the university had really considered before. And at the same time, here are these amazing new ed tech platforms, right? And offering all kinds of opportunities to innovate pedagogy, to innovate how we teach. What I love, being a Rice faculty and watching my colleagues, I do think the appetite for experimentation is alive and well on our campus, and I think faculty wanted to play with the fun new tools, right? And they wanted to see what could Coursera really do, what they wanted it to do, in this course or not. So I think the attitude was one of collaboration and partnership rather than sort of, we're passive to this. Not across the entire campus, but across large parts of it. So that was great. And look, we today have a number of online degree programs, and they attract students from around the world, and that's terrific. That makes our classrooms richer and better. It was a multi-year process. Change is not the work of a moment. It's the work of many years. All of this was happening before COVID, and so we didn't know that we were going to need this capacity at that time. So it was very much elective, right? We opted into this because it was the future of education, and we had to figure out how are we going to use it for the good of our mission, right? Which is really high quality education in a very personalized setting. And so we did a lot of great experiments with that, and developed a policy, of course, for the university. COVID hit, and then we were all doing it. It wasn't optional. Yeah, it was not optional. And I'll never forget, this wonderful digital photographer and a studio artist who both came to me and said, "There's no way we can teach our courses online. It's not right. I'm a sculptor, right? What am I going to do?" You know what? They came up with incredibly creative ways to teach using this tool that they never thought they'd have use for. And so, I think that was a moment of learning across the university. So, it was a great almost 10 years, I guess. And I think the university's in a better place for it. I think a lot of universities are.
Now you've pivoted to really being focused on global initiatives at Rice. What does that look like, and what is most exciting to you about the partnerships that you all have now in Paris and India? We'll go through some of these, and one that we're going to tease. Yeah. But yeah, talk about the partnership in Paris, I think, first.
Okay, sure, yeah. And so some of my colleagues joke that I'm sort of the VP for institutional transformation, right? And so I get these special projects, and so digital was a special project, and now global is a special project. And I don't know, what kind of experiences you've had with universities, but there is a sector of U.S. universities that about 25 years ago decided that they needed to not only be nationally prominent universities, but be international businesses. And they came up with different ways to realize that ambition. Rice was not one of those universities at that time. So we were much more focused on our national presence and reputation, and really, confirming our place as a preeminent institution in the United States. Fantastic project. What that means is that we are now developing a set of muscles that many of our colleagues, have already developed, and we learn from them for sure. It's a great moment to innovate because, as you know, the world is a tricky place, and many of those experiments have played out in ways that are very educational for us. So we approach the whole focus on strategy with the eye towards innovation. And many of you know Rice. You may not know that we have a new strategic plan that was announced in October. It's called Momentous, and the tagline is Personalized Scale for Global Impact. And so what I've described about Rice, the personalized scale, right now we are tethering that really to global impact. So to taking the fantastic research that our individual faculty do and making sure it's scaled for optimal global impact, that it's known as being globally impactful, and the same with our educational mission. The university also in that strategic plan announced a really breathtakingly ambitious goal over 10 years of becoming the world's premier teaching and research university. And so obviously we can't do that sitting at home in Houston, right? And so the Paris campus is the first that we have built, where it's not only a faculty member having a collaboration with a faculty member in Europe, but it's actually an institutional commitment to a particular presence. And that was very exciting to build, every aspect of that, not only from establishing presence in Paris, but also the program around that. We picked Paris for a very straightforward reason. It's it is, of course, an epicenter for international networks. It's a city of great, pass-through from around the world, but also it's the only city in the world. I was talking about those international rankings a little earlier. It's the only city in the world that is the home of all of the country's top universities. So we can't say that about New York, right? We can't say that about London. Can't say that, about other cities. So it's really an epicenter of research excellence. It's a very concentrated community of research excellence. And so it's a great place for us to be. We've had a number of fantastic conferences there and summits. So this is an opportunity to really open us to collaborations more deeply with European partners. And so that's been terrific. And it's a growing campus. So we picked a beautiful, beautiful building in the center of the city in the most historic district. And that's a signal that we're not building a fortress, right? We are joining a neighborhood. And that's a distinction that's very salient because so many universities sort of went in with the attitude, let's build, our own instance of what we're doing in the US, but over here. So I think it's off to a really strong start, and I encourage everyone when you're in Paris next to pay a visit. 3 fantastic staff who can show you the campus. And then just a plug for a project that we are doing in Paris with the Greater Houston Partnership. Many of you may have heard of VivaTech. It's a really big AI summit. It's in Paris, June 9th through the 13th. And so the partnership and Rice are co-hosting a delegation to go. And everyone here, there's flyers if you're interested. It's going to be a very choice 5-day event. Houston, and this is salient for us, right? Houston is the first city that VivaTech will be sponsoring and representing, having representation there as a city. So we will have a Houston booth. Houston business interests will be there meeting with European partners. It's a real opportunity to accelerate the great work that's happening in Houston, but more broadly in Texas.
Texas goes to Paris.
Texas goes to Paris. And the evening reception is at the former Embassy of Texas. So you guys may know that France was the first and possibly the only nation to recognize the Republic of Texas back in the day, right? And that sort of 1836 to 44 moment. And so we will have a great final reception at the former embassy.
The work that you all are doing there in Paris and in other places around the globe is so reflective of the work you did with the archive and really, your work with Forum as well. Just this idea that ideas, just like people, ideas and things are crossing borders and looking at it just with these building a fortress and trying to evaluate our culture or our ideas or our innovation that way is not reality.
Yeah.
And so talk about, how you bring that approach to these global partnerships and just, how you let ideas flow between boundaries, maybe tearing down some of those, the preconceived notion that we've got to pile everything into our little fortress here.
So, we all know that the largest threats in our world and unsolved problems are not geographically specific. They may have geographic instances, but things like climate change, ethical AI, the future of cities. These are challenges that every local community is dealing with, and that means that we really need to convene global teams to understand the full complexity of some of those problems, and then to really come up with nuanced answers that don't create additional problems, unintended consequences downstream, right? So that is a challenge. That's often the critique of innovation, is that innovators, don't sufficiently account for the effects to others, right, of their innovations. And so I think it's really important, as we look at the challenges that we all face, that we bring the best minds together and tackle it as a team, not thinking in terms of nations, but thinking in terms of shared interests. We all know that glacial melt in Iceland raises shoreline, around the world.
When creating these partnerships, whether it's with Paris or in India, what does that first step look like when you at Rice Global are looking out to launch something? What's the first step?
Yeah, it's got to be about what our faculty are doing and want to be doing, and ways that we can have differential impact and acceleration of that impact by engaging with a different set of interlocutors, right? So that's got to be front and center. India's been great because we have so many fantastic faculty at Rice that have connections throughout India and higher ed in India. So we've got this sort of built-in set of champions. But it's also the case that Rice's historic and current strengths in engineering and STEM, of course, as well as architecture, humanities, and social sciences, align beautifully with the felt need and the ongoing challenges in India. So, the strengths of our engineering and natural science faculty are absolutely integral to the priorities of that country. So to me, those are the ingredients you need for a successful commitment.
And then how do you keep it going? I know several of these have been, kind of years in the making and hopefully years to come. So how do you, have that be continuous? How do you create longevity?
Yeah, I think that is a key. And we want longevity without ossification, right? So it needs to be alive and it needs to be moving and transforming all the time. But yeah, you get real benefits over time. We're in just the third year in Europe, and we're already seeing incredible growth and strategic opportunities that are highly opportunistic and have to do with actually being there. One of them, Paris Science and Letters, which is a very highly regarded new university in France. It is the French model of higher education is complex and interesting, but it is a new university that has been supported by the French government. It's an accelerator university, so it has 17 different institutions, French institutions within it, ranging from Curie Institute to the ENS, the École Normale Supérieure, Chimay is the chemistry school, so there's this excellent neighborhood of small, profoundly important research institutions that all tuck up under the PSL umbrella. And so we're really exploring how we could develop a new product for them, a bachelor's degree, which they don't currently have, but a coordinated bachelor's degree around environmental science, actually. So, an area where Rice has strength and they want strength, and so that's the kind of collaboration that wouldn't happen if we weren't there.
Mm-hmm. Really coming in to fill a need that they have, and such a strength of Rice.
Well, and maybe it's not even a need that they new, right? Or they didn't go in with that, but as we started working with them more and we were talking about, who we are and what we want to achieve, right? It was an idea that came out of the collaboration. Yeah.
I know you all are in the middle of launching another global initiative this time. Am I allowed to say? I don't want to out you guys. It's not, it's really not even, as she was telling me, not even really online yet. So this would be quite the tease, but y'all are in the early stages of it.
Yeah, well, it's a very well established, very interesting university that is actually a partnership of about 24 universities from around the world. And so Rice is going to be joining that partnership. The ink is not dry yet on that, but it's a really exciting opportunity. It's located on a little island, one of the many of those little islands right off of Venice, San Servolo, and this was an incredibly creative idea of these universities from around the world saying, let's use that island to create an educational and research space that's focused on a certain set of shared interests. And energy transitions and climate is one of those, social justice, global affairs. So this curriculum then is a living curriculum that faculty from these universities contribute to, refresh, keep alive, and then the students from those universities are all in the classroom together, learning from those team taught courses. And so it's a very international classroom, right? I could be sitting next to a student from Tsinghua, or a student from Exeter, or a student from Tel Aviv University, or all of the above, learning about a topic together.
Really exciting. We'll be waiting for that to get posted so we can learn more about that. I want to back up just a bit. If I think we've still got time here. I don't have a watch on, so I'm not quite sure how we're going.
She said she'd come and let us know.
Okay, that means we're in the clear. We're going to keep yapping.
Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, great.
I want to back up because we've talked about all these incredible initiatives that you spearheaded and been at the forefront of. I want to back up and give people a little bit of your background. Was there a moment in your own education or your career where you knew, okay, I'm not just going to be doing the run-of-the-mill path through higher education? Was there a moment that kind of changed the trajectory of how you think about global innovation?
When we look back on our lives, we always create more order than there was at that time, right? So we spin these stories that make sense, where it all makes sense. But I do think that a threshold moment for me, right after I graduated, I moved to Japan and lived in Japan for a few years. I worked for the Japanese Ministry of Education, and it was really interesting just to be immersed in a radically different country and culture. And as I was applying to graduate schools to do work in American Studies, right, you see your country from the outside and it changes it forever. And so I do think that methodology and perspective has shaped the contributions I've made to my fields, and then also, to my industry, actually.
Yeah. What do you see in the students that you work with? Do you see that reflected in them? Do you see that mentality growing? Maybe students looking more outward and globally than in the past?
So one thing that's important to know is that the Paris Initiative, a key piece of it is having more students have an international experience. You'd think, right, that in fact with students at Rice, they probably have a passport and such. That's not the case. It's a very sort of segmented student body. Certainly there are students, who were able to travel with their families, but more students actually not. And so more than 50%, actually I think over 60% last summer, it was the first time they left the country. So this is, how do you get a passport? How do you navigate passport control? How do you use a Metro card? This kind of very basic education is world changing, and you can really see it in these students that they feel empowered, right? They have a set of skills that they didn't even know they didn't have. But let's face it, so many businesses that these students are going to be in have international offices, right? Regardless of the industry, there often is, global business that gets done, and that you need employees who actually understand the rudiments of that, right?
The world outside of Texas,
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know you are truly still in the process of innovating how higher education works here in Texas. You have a book that is so focused on what's next. So talk to us about what's next for you.
Yeah. The book, or I can't tell you what's next for me.
Who's to say? Talk to us about your next book.
Yeah. So the title is Invent Ed: How an American Tradition of Innovation Can Transform College Today. And, basically the argument is that we have a rich cultural heritage of innovation and invention in the U.S., that it is a method that actually has been refined over hundreds of years, and it depends on a kind of radical, creative mindset that comes from putting very different disciplinary mindsets in radical conjunction. Right, and so we all know, Steve Jobs and the calligraphy course, right? We've heard that story, but that doesn't come out of nowhere, right? Ben Franklin was a successful author and poetic innovator before he ever had a scientific career. In fact, it was the financial success that he had as a writer and an editor that enabled him to self-fund his scientific experimentations. Same is true for Samuel Morse, right? We remember him now, of course, for the telegraph, but guess what? He was a painter, a remarkable painter, and he literally in his studio, his art studio, set up his scientific lab, and in fact did the first prototype of the code on his easel, right? So that kind of laboratory where different ideas are bubbling all the time is something that universities can and really should create and maintain. And the more that students can go into university understanding that this is, for them, right? It's not only getting the degree requirements in, the business degree so you can go get a job, but there's actually a method. There's a method that you can learn that will be durable over time, over industry, right? It's really building a creative mindset rather than a fixed mindset in students. And look, we all get it, right? It's really hard to get into college. It's really expensive when you get there, if you get there, and you want to make good grades so you can go out in the market and get a job. Absolutely understandable. I totally get it. And the reality is that, across industry sectors, the repeated theme is we need more creative employees. We need people to be able to create things we don't currently have. We don't need people to just be obedient and implement. We need people to create. And so we have to, it's not teaching data analytics as it is today, right? It's teaching our students how to have the mental creativity to build the next industry, right?
How do you get institutions out of that mindset? I'm putting myself in the shoes of a potential college student and having to tick a checkbox on what I wanted to major in, and then, so how do you kind of unwind the thinking to get students, but also the whole system, to be thinking more creatively?
So we've got all the ingredients in place. So at Rice University, and we're pretty typical, students come in, you get to pick 5, no more than 6 courses, right, out of a course catalog that has 1,000 courses. So, it's there, right? It's creating the pathways and the encouragements to build an appetite in students to understand how they could strategically, in taking a course in something far afield, build capacity. Look, I'm an English professor, or I guess I still am an English professor, but right, I love literature, I'm a creative, and it was taking, programming classes because I was just curious, that I think was integral to much of the work we've been talking about over these last decades. I didn't know it at the time. But that's nonetheless the case. And so part of what Invent Ed argues is we all need to commit to building creative mindset, right? A growth mindset in students, like a belief that if you're bad at something, it's not preordained, like that you have blue eyes, but actually you can get better at it through trial and error.
Really incredible stuff. I want to know, you are so much more than an English expert, an English professor. When we were first meeting and talking, I think you said to me, I knew I was weird from the start, and you are welcome here. We love weird here in Austin. So I see Lauren is wrapping us up.
She's giving us the funk eye. Thank you so much. This has been really fun.
Thanks for letting us talk to you guys, and thanks for your work here in Texas.
Thanks so much, Avery.
Thank you again for joining us, Avery.
Take the chair with me.
And now we know to be very careful coming on and off those chairs. I'm going to welcome to now join Dr. Lavander in the hot seat, Dr. Sunny Zhang. Come on up. I was thrilled when she and the Born Global community decided to join us as partners for Global Innovation Day here at Texas House. She just wrapped a panel upstairs, so there's going to be people trickling in and out as they're swapping spots. But let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Sunny. And I'm going to pass my mic to her. Thank you, Lauren.
So I switched seats because now I get to be the interviewer and ask the questions. So listen, for those who were not upstairs at your amazing panel, can you tell us a little bit about your two amazing projects?
All right, such a pleasure to be here. I love the topic of today. It's all about global partnership for innovation. Specifically, our discussion will surround around education and entrepreneurship, and that exactly answers, Carolyn, your question about the two brands that I founded. One is Born Global, as you guys probably have heard from Lauren. We just wrapped up a stellar panel upstairs with investors who invest in unicorns and under-tapped markets, but also with creatives, creative industry leader like Chris Do, who's literally building a school to educate 1 billion people. So that is the spirit of Born Global. Essentially, we are supporting globally born entrepreneurs and investors, and we're also interconnecting startup ecosystems throughout the world. So we have chapters not only in the major hubs in the United States, but also across continents from Asia to Africa to Europe to Latin America. You know, it really echoes to all the amazing work you do, Carolyn, at Rice University. So that's on the entrepreneurship side. But then over time, we also observed, of course, talents are everywhere, capital is not everywhere, resources are not everywhere, and the fundamental cause is unequal distribution of resources and specifically education. And that's also what motivated us to start True Leap. So you probably have heard leapfrog, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're focusing on a lot of the emerging markets and underdeveloped, let's say, developing parts of the world. And by the way, that also including the United States. As you know, there's coastal area, there's heartland, where I have been essentially globally resource-limited communities that didn't have the infrastructure and didn't have the digital platform or the content and all the ecosystem support, because we really believe by not replacing but empowering educators and creators, we can actually help them monetize their expertise, but in the meanwhile make education more accessible and more affordable and also more scalable, because current solutions, as you know, in addition University, all the platforms like Udemy and Coursera, they're designed for global north, I have to say. When you step out of the bubble, you realize that when the course is taking half of their salary, people are not going to be able to. Over here, it's only like 1%, less than 1% in terms of purchasing a course. So essentially, we're addressing education accessibility issue through affordability and by really empowering creators and educators, so that, for example, your work at Rice is impacting all the Rice University, very elite, very tight community. But imagine if the rest of the world can also benefit. And I know some of the project you're leading at Rice is also within that spirit, holding that spirit, making education more open source so it's more accessible, because by cultivating global talents, we're actually helping ourselves. And that's probably what we can zoom out to see, global trends, why we're doing this, right? I'm sure Rice is also doing this based on a lot of data, a lot of demographics, because we can't just look at, our small circle. We really have to zoom out in the global digital age.
That's great. No, that's really terrific. And so let me ask you, because before you came in, I was talking a lot about how new digital technologies and capabilities really can transform business as usual. So can you say a few words about how digital capabilities are helping your incredibly important business?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, nowadays, pretty much every corner on Earth have internet access. It's just a matter of high speed versus sparse. In fact, my partner Sandeep and I just got off from a call over here with someone in Kenya, our partner, who's working with farmers. They have phones with limited signal, but they can actually get education content resources, so they learn not only farming but also entrepreneurship, because as you know, that's really where the economy is evolving from resource-based to digital economy. So everybody really needs to upskill, reskill. In fact, I'm talking about pretty much everyone from developing countries but also developed parts of the world. In fact, there's a gentleman who had this really interesting proposal at Singapore Parliament. Can you imagine? He's got this spiky hair and made this very bold suggestion like, hey, by the time we get to 40, we need to go back to school. And our government should cover that, because by then, whatever you learned has been obsolete. And with technology, we'll be able to reskill and upskill. And that's why we emphasize, in addition to academic training that university and schools are doing an amazing job, all the skill development so that we're future ready. Because honestly, we all know the future is already here. The future of work is no longer in the future, it's already happening. But the future of learning is still behind. I have to say, education itself really needs to keep up, because it's an overdue industry and technology is already here, but it's a little fragmented. It's also a little bit, elite driven, if I may, because of the cost. Even AI, which is making education more accessible, comes with a cost. If you understand the infrastructure, the data center that you need to support, you will also know right now, for example, let's use AI as the technology enablement for education technology. Specifically, the global south is really left behind. And guess what? Their population is 85% of the whole world population. So we can't afford doing that, because it would be a slow motion tsunami with global demographics trend, where the developed world, we're experiencing a population decline and aging. And in the meanwhile, developing countries, especially Africa, it's still experiencing a population boom and growth, fraternity rate-wise. I'm sure you also observed that when you were in Japan. By the way, that's fascinating. It's almost like reminded me of my time as an international student coming here for my PhD, which is totally, speaking of looking at the world from a brand new perspective. But as you see, Japan is a great example of a developed economy with advanced technology, but it's unstoppable, the population, due to low fertility rate, right?
Yes, and so many, thanks, great answers, so many important questions to ask. So one is exactly what you mentioned, the changing age demographics of the world. And so could you speak to how those changing demographics intersect with your priorities and what you think that means for the future of work, which is here today?
Thank you. Yeah, Carolyn, I'm also glad that Rice has been emphasizing on your partnership in India, for example, because it just surpassed China as the biggest population in the world. And it is truly a global talent pool, as you know, from Silicon Valley CEOs to, essentially pretty much all the technology we're using. There's talents from India behind. But if I may share more data, speaking of global demographics, what's happening right now, it's already been happening. I think we're waking up to the reality because the United States just started to experiencing, as opposed to, let's say, Japan, Korea, and European countries, they've already felt it for a long, long time. But we start to decline population-wise, and our fertility rate, maybe we'll just do a quick quiz. I mean, two professors sitting here. You guys have to do a quiz, right? What do you think we need for each woman to have the number of kids for our population to stay sustainable, to stay even, to sustain our population? How many kids do you think on average a woman need to have? And how many do you think US currently have? So you would guess 3, I see 2. You would think it would be 2 at least, but it's actually 2.1 because there's also a lot of factors, not everybody, unfortunately. I think we all made it this far. But essentially, on average, we need 2.1 kids for every woman in terms of fertility rate for the population to stay sustainable. And the current birth rate, I'm not going to get to US, let's get to Japan, and you won't believe which one is the lowest fertility rate right now all over the world. It's what we're experiencing. K-pop culture, there's a reason you see a lot of influence coming abroad, because can you believe Korea? And give me a number. What would you think Korea's fertility rate, if you may guess? Let's say Japan you might be aware of, right? Japan is like 1 or...
Yeah.
0.7.
0.7. It is the lowest in the world. And that's also why we just had the discussion. I know some of our friends came from Rooftop. Global wealth and global talents are both migrating. Not only, we'll leave the immigration, issue for later, but global wealth is also transferring from these countries that traditionally are very wealthy because of technology, because of their economy. But now, due to their declining population, that part of the world are looking to relocate their wealth so it doesn't decline, because you need to put your money where money's making money. And that part of the world are the emerging markets. And that means, Africa, Southeast Asia, fast-growing population and fast-growing economies. Now, in contrast, maybe this is where I checked reality with the United States. What do you think is the current fertility rate of the United States? Because we're below 2.1, I can tell you that.
What is it?
It's 1.7, or say 1.67. So, that's another discussion. But let me, in contrast, what do you think is Africa in terms of fertility rate? The part of the Earth, population that is still growing. So, on average, overall, it's 4. But Sub-Sahara Africa is one woman on average 4 kids, and countries like DRC, Congo, where Tulip started, in Africa, it's 1 woman 6 kids. So essentially, Africa by 2100, guys, it comes faster than we think, because we're already living in science fiction, right? Out of 5 people on Earth, if you think of all the Earthlings, 2 will be Asian, 2 will be African, and the rest of the world is 1 out of 5. So that is really, in a nutshell, where global demographic is taking us, and why it is imperative to take education and take entrepreneurship at a global scale. We can no longer afford just focusing on our own area, because people ask me, Sunny, why are you going to Africa or Asia? In addition to Houston, Texas, and the United States, why are you helping them? No, we are helping because they will help us, because the world economy, the world innovation, entrepreneurship will be powered by global talents. If we don't address that issue, there's global security issue and instability, uncertainty, you name it. And that's really the root cause. When we started with entrepreneurship, venture investing, we really need to get to the bottom of it, and starting with making education more accessible because of the global demographics trend.
So you are a marketing professor.
That's right.
So how do you get the word out to these different markets? How do you let them know about these great opportunities that are young?
Yeah, this is an excellent question. I think, Carolyn, this also goes back to the theme of this discussion. This conversation is all about partnership, right? You're absolutely right. Let me just give you an example. When we first started hosting events, of course, we have the technology platform that is specifically designed for emerging markets and developing countries, which means you can just hop in without downloading. You can use your app in a very affordable Android phone with a little bit of signal. It's not, expensive or over-engineered like some of the solutions we're used to. But even without the app, like farmers in Africa, you can just open the browser and jump in. In fact, that's what we did at Born Global session. So, everybody can. So technologically speaking, it's already available. It's in the cloud. You can say anyone with the internet can access. But in reality, that's not the case, because for them, cloud is another universe, guys. Like without the local partnership, you're not going to be able to penetrate. Even if you bring the hottest, celebrity or influencer. The other day I was, my kids happened to be scrolling on YouTube and run into a Jackie Chan short. And the host was asking, what do you think, like, who's your favorite Kardashian? And he's like, what is Kardashian? I'm just saying that in another part of the world, you really need to think about how you get the word out. I love this question, Carolyn, not because I'm a marketing professor, but because my training is actually social psychology. When it comes to innovation adoption, when it comes to technology, it's not necessarily the better, the cheaper, the more affordable, the easier to use. You can just take over the market. You really need local partners who are well established and trustworthy, so that they are the ones on the ground, and that plays several roles. Number one, your product can change from what I call go-to-market, which is typically the approach, right? You build something and let's launch. Let's find the users. No. What you want to do is come from market. So with local partners, you have the insight. In fact, we had our pilot version that's already well tested. I know some of the friends came from Women in AI, like Connie and others. We actually used it years ago with pilot in the United States and also after schools and resource limited communities. But when we take our solution to Africa, we realize that there are lots of local challenges we weren't aware of, and our local partners are the ones that provided the market intelligence to start with for us to really adapt our technology to work for these underserved parts of the world. So that's really from a market research perspective. Now, from the partnership perspective, remember, we entered Africa and India. We were new, right? But our partners have been on the ground for decades. And they have strong relationship. This is so-called private-public partnership, PPP, as you are very familiar with when it comes to education technology and all the fundamental challenges. I love what you commented earlier, Carolyn. A lot of, in fact, the most imperative challenges we're all facing are global challenges like climate, education, sustainability, and not to mention, the tsunami of population collapse. So essentially, we have these common challenges that motivate our local partner who's been, feeling the pain, and also they're well connected. So when we enter a country, we have a Department of Education in DRC Congo, for example, coming to our inauguration to do the opening ceremony, and of course our local partner in this case is the Catholic School Association, which has 20,000 schools. So in other words, we don't even need to burn money, or we don't like to, unlike, you get funding, you start running Google and Facebook ads, and all the money, you raised from investors went to Google and Facebook and, social media and commercial money. But in this case, we work with local partners like Catholic School Association, which has 20,000 schools. And imagine the population, each school have somewhere between 1,000 to 3,000 students. and they are overcapacity in the sense that there are women with more kids who couldn't be in school, displaced. So essentially it's a huge mission that needs all the stakeholders to come together. So to answer your question, when we entered DRC and Ghana and now Angola and Kenya, these are like, ink is not, it's not dry yet, using your word, but essentially the ones that we are on the ground, like Congo, DR Congo, and Ghana, these are all through local partnership, so that this is what we call top-down B2B model, as opposed to bottom-up, where you just go to the individual consumer. So it's a very different approach when it comes to marketing, and it's really because of local culture and local economy. It is highly relationship oriented as opposed to, let's say, transaction-based kind of culture. So you play the long-term game. Education is also long-term, as you know. You build partnership and you go to market through these international partnership that's very trusted, and they know what's best. And we provide, everything it takes to address the challenges, and we meet where they are. We don't just stay in the cloud and say, hey, everybody, we're accessible. Come to us, we're in the cloud. We really need to meet them where they are. I hope that makes sense, Carolyn.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So, it's a compelling picture for sure. And I guess my next question then is, what are the challenges of the scale you're describing? Where are the pain points?
All right, so let's start from the ground up. When we started as a software platform, as the combination of learning management and content management, and also a global content marketplace, we started as a software company, right? When we get to these underserved communities, we realize, oh my goodness, they really need everything, and this is why we developed the so-called ecosystem approach. And by the way, I don't know if anybody's from Boston. I'll be presenting, I'll be showcasing TrueLeap story at the inaugural Harvard Education and AI and Education for Global South conference, end of the month, to discuss exactly this question, Carolyn, the challenges. So you can't just, have an AI bot. Really, unlike here, we solve problems almost like we address them like so specifically. But over there, you really need the entire ecosystem. So guess what? Before we even bring our software solution, we really need to help them with infrastructure. That includes the hardware in addition to the software, but also the content and the training, the ongoing maintenance, and of course the data analytics, because they don't even know who's enrolled, like how many students do they have. It takes them 30 to 40 days just to get the enrollment data, as opposed to live data, who are online. But before we get there, we literally have to fight with termites, guys, because they have labs, but the labs are piled with equipments with dusts, because previously it's fragmented. Like somebody would come with computers, box checked, digital transformation completed. No, that doesn't work, right? Somebody else would develop content that's in the cloud. That doesn't work. You really need to bring everything together. This is what we call ecosystem approach, where all the stakeholders come together. Of course, our local partner. And the other challenge we're seeing is really infrastructure, like internet and data center and even electricity. So essentially, believe it or not, as an education technology company, there are other companies reaching out to us, including telecommunication. We're also working with Dell, of course, headquartered in Austin, and a lot of telecommunication companies that are building high-speed internet network and providing devices, because they also know having that alone is not going to work. So essentially, that's really our takeaway in terms of what are the challenges and what it takes. Now, specifically on the software side, we are all spoiled by our, high-speed internet and fancy devices, right? Once we get out of, our nurtured environment, if you go to parts of the world, essentially you realize they're usually on their Android device, and they don't really have high-speed internet, and they have on and off. So you have to think, they can't really join Zoom session for an hour. What are you going to do? So, for example, I'll give you one simple solution. We have an audio only. You remember Clubhouse days, anybody, throughout COVID, where you can just jump in, you don't have to look nice? It was actually nice because you can take a walk, you can, get to bed and still be in the Clubhouse room, but it's very limited because you can't really get any information other than audio. So we actually have the audio interface where the educators and creators can share screen, so you can just join by audio and still see the course material. And the other thing is you can actually adapt your signal on the receiver side based on internet bandwidth. So you can see if somebody's dropping, you can see they're actually struggling, and they can adjust their volume on their side depending on their environment and all. So essentially, it is very user-centric, understanding that we are serving emerging markets and global south and resource-limited communities, so our technology has to respond to that. So
that's great. How do you support this? And let's shift to the venture piece also of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to really bridge the gap, because that was literally the topic on Rooftop, between talent and capital, because as you know, talents are everywhere, but resources are not. And when I talk about capital, I talk about 4 capitals, okay? I know we usually think about financial capital, but here in my books, financial capital is the little finger. It comes the last. Number 1 is intellectual capital, which is really the knowledge, the expertise, and usually that's stuck. I have to say there's a curse. This is the first time I'm sharing this thought in public, but I'm sure we are sitting together. A lot of friends are actually top leader in your industry, right? But do you feel like what makes you successful is also your golden handcuff? Because the more successful, the more you rise to the top of the pyramid, and your circle becomes smaller and smaller. I'm sure, Carolyn, you are always in boardrooms and meeting with world leaders, but your expertise can benefit like millions, if not billions of people, but they don't have access to you. Does that make sense? Absolutely. So essentially, I feel like there's a curse of experts. The more leading expert you become, somehow your circle become more and more selective and smaller, and your insights and your wisdom get trapped. But technology can change that, okay? I mean, Khan Academy is a great example, but in our platform, everybody can be Khan. Like, you can share your expertise with anybody in this world who are hungry and thirsty and eager to learn. Unlike here, in our neighborhood, my kids included, are just filled with dopamine and swiping short videos that's entertaining. But what I'm saying is we can unlock your expertise, and specifically this is also not a charity, because imagine you're actually creating value, okay, by sharing your expertise with a worldwide audience. So you should be incentivized, and that's really the mechanism on the platform. You can monetize by, of course, hosting events, developing courses. You can turn your expertise into product, digital product, and make it accessible to millions of learners. I'll give you another example. We have 3 million entrepreneurs joining us from Ghana through our partnership with an organization called IBON. And these are university students and graduates who are looking to start businesses, because in Africa, a huge emphasis, I think, all over the world is job creation, which is skill development. And that's really how this whole value chain starts with the intellectual capital through education and skill development. Nurture, number 2, right? Human capital, which is really the talents, the workforce we need to build the economy, build innovation. And then the social capital, which is all the partnership, all the interconnecting. Because, otherwise we're isolated. Like all these, especially underserved communities, they tend to be invisible, underappreciated, and not connected, not plugged in. They tend to be marginalized. So that social capital is very important. And of course, I talk about financial capital. Once you have the 3 from, intellectual to human capital to social capital, when you have the network and the connection, money comes naturally. So that's really coming back to your question on our work at Born Global Venture and Born Global Community to bring all four capital together, because it's not just about writing a check and waiting for outlier to have returns. It's really about bring all it takes, especially for these let's say foreign-born, international, but also let's say women, minority, a lot of us, all of the underdogs. In fact, I don't even want to put labels. We all feel it, right? We, all of us, for any reason, at our life and our career, at some point have felt that, right? We are the new kid on the block. We are the fresh off the boat, but we are also the last one in line a lot of times. And for all of the underdogs, let's say, we can be superheroes. In fact, if you check all the superheroes, all of them are underdogs to start with. And it is education, and it is these opportunities to build businesses through entrepreneurship, through venture investment, that we can really unlock and build the economy and have this positive cycle, as you see, eventually investing in talents and investing in company, building global wealth, and investing in global talent.
That is an amazingly ambitious picture for the future. It's wonderful. And I know the venture, you're at the beginning, it's early days, but 5-10 years from now, what would your dream come true be?
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm a dreamer, as you could tell.
I gathered.
I also felt like, it's important for the dreamer to stay grounded. Ascended keeps me grounded so that I don't just, run off, in the outer space. You probably could see some of our promotion materials all about, the outer space, because when we zoom out, we really don't see differences. For all the earthlings to be all humanity, celebrating humanity as one. But my dream, or say my vision, is really a world where everyone, regardless of where you are, forget about all these labels, nationality, geographical location. Wherever you are, you can learn. You can have easily accessible learning technology, but also content, and that doesn't stop there. You don't need to put your life on hold. Just learn, because you can also share your expertise, share what you learn, which means you're creating content and monetize. You see how it all come together, and once you make money, you can invest and grow your wealth, and then invest in talents again. So that's really my dream down the road, where we can be all in this world, regardless where we are. We can all learn, we can all share, we can all teach, and we can all earn and make money and build wealth, and with that, give back and cultivate the next generation of talents, because we need to keep this positive cycle going.
And what is the largest impediment to that dream, do you think?
Impediment in terms of?
Blockage. What would keep that from happening?
All right, so this is also something we don't address enough, guys. It is the resistance to innovation and to technology. We tend to feel like, of course, all the startup story we see, which has this survival, bias, which means you only see the one who made it, right? So we see the excitement about technology, about innovation, but in reality, there's a lot of resistance. Like, it's new, you don't want to use it, you don't have space. So really, the biggest roadblock is just to give it a try. Like, it's almost like when the kids were having broccolis, right? Or carrots. My son started not liking, but now loves carrots. But essentially, it is really good for you, but if you're just used to whatever you use, you're never going to step out. So we have one of our campaigns going to call it, "Why Zoom when you can true leap?" Because you can actually take the leap, and we all need to do that. Honestly, 2025, regardless of what you do, regardless of your full-time job, daytime job, you need to be thinking, because the transformation at workplace is coming faster than you think. I mean, we're not going to get into the AGI discussion, but you can feel it already. Jobs are declining, but new jobs are coming. So why Zoom when you can True Leap? You can actually start a side hustle. Just share what you know, and you don't need to be an influencer. That's the other thing. People think, and including myself, I have to say, we all thought you have to be a YouTuber or a huge influencer with like 100,000 followers to start making content. That's a huge misconception. Speaking of the mental roadblock when it comes to innovation, if you know something other people don't know, you can monetize it. Okay? My dad, who has an urban garden in the backyard, is a huge celebrity. I mean, celebrity meaning his vegetables are like so beautiful and big. He was even covered by local newspaper. What I'm saying is he's nobody, but he has expertise. By the way, he's trained as a lawyer and he had a whole life as a vice president of a higher ed institution. But after retirement, he became a gardener and he's an educator because he's sharing tips. What I'm saying is, if you know something that other people don't, you can share and you can turn your expertise into digital products such as online events and courses. You can go live if you like interaction. You can record if you hate live interaction. You can go audio, you can go video, but you can monetize. So you don't need to be an influencer or a YouTuber. You can be a true leaper, guys.
Yeah.
So we have time maybe for one more question. Let me ask you this. Throughout this really great conversation, I feel like there's been a thread that we haven't addressed directly, and that really is, what you're talking about is learning as a lifelong, right? We talk about this as the 60-year university or, what have you. So can you say a few words about how you think the lifelong educational market is evolving and your role in it?
Absolutely. I love also what you mentioned earlier, Carolyn. You said that we're not building a castle, you're building a neighborhood. I love that because the neighborhood for us, it's a global neighborhood, right? Because with digital platform, there's no distance, really. Like, you can hop on with anyone, any parts of the world, literally. But essentially, to answer your question about lifelong learning, we really need to stop thinking school is a period of time where you are going through K to 12 and university, and don't be like me. I have another article about PhDs are going to go extinct. No offense, Carolyn, you know what I mean? And then, of course, the second part is long-lived PhDs because, they can use AI instead of being replaced. But knowledge worker is really, unfortunately, the first ones being replaced, with the next wave of technology. That also means whatever your training is, you really need to continue, embrace technology and update yourself. And that's really what lifelong learning. But if I also could jump in the philosophical level, why do you think is the purpose of life? Like, why do you think we come for this tour and leave? Like, it's really to learn. Like, I really think the moment you stop learning is the moment you start dying. The moment you stop learning is the moment you start dying, because we can no longer just like confine. Okay, you spend a few years. That time was there in our parents' and grandparents' generation, where you get a degree and you're all set for the rest of your life, right? You have your skills and you're good. You stay with one company and that's it. Nowadays, everybody keeps switching, so you need to pick up new skills. But on the other hand, we don't stop there, right? We actually are not only lifelong learners, we are also lifelong sharers, or say creators and educators. The reason is educating is also the best way to learn. Imagine a world where everybody can be sharing their knowledge. You may ask me, by the way, Carolyn, because there's a counter argument, like there's AI, why do we even need to learn, right? Someone's like, I have my co-pilot, why do we even need to learn? A few answers. Number one, if you don't learn, you don't even know what to ask the AI, like, because AI is really in the hand of those who use it. I'm telling you, even those who build it don't know how to use it. They build it, yes, fantastic. They're the creators and builders of the algorithm. But 2025, AI is in the hand of the people who use it. So, a few things. Number one, if you don't learn, you don't even need to know how to ask. Number two, the current information in AI is largely actually, highly limited to, let's say, first world or global north or elite population data, because number one, it is those who have the digital infrastructure. It is those who speak English mainly, because if you look at other language, it really doesn't do that well. And it's also more educated population that has formal documentation that digitalized into the algorithm and the database that's powering current AI. In other words, the work we're doing, the rest of the world, global south and developing countries, they're not captured. So in other words, your expertise may not be as valuable, but it is still highly valuable to the rest of the world. And as a result, as we onboard to the technology platform, we will be able to also be more inclusive in terms of their data and their pattern of learning, so that we can design better interface to create a future where everybody can learn and everybody can teach and make money and invest.
On that note, I think it's time to move to the next panel. Is that right, Lauren?
Well, let's get some closing thoughts. So, Dr. Carolyn Levander, VP of Global with Rice University, and Dr. Sunny Zhang, Born Global Community and Born Global Ventures, and True Leap.
And True Leap. So we've had people trickling in. Who here is visiting from internationally?
Just on,
Quite a few of y'all.
I'm from Houston, sorry.
You're from Houston, but you represent an international community.
Oh, that's right.
Who would share that after hearing from Dr. Levander and hearing from Dr. Sunny, they're thinking about their own entrepreneurship, they're thinking about their own contributions that they can offer, your thought leadership, feeding AI new information, absolutely. And Dr. Levander, you and Avery, I think, had a fascinating conversation on the importance of partnerships, the valuable work that Rice University and other educational institutions are doing as well. So let's give a big round of applause for Dr. Levander, Dr. Sunny, and for Avery.